In the kingdom of Ezelbite, the Kreutzer territory, an old lady was wandering around looking for Ray. She asked some random man, but said that he hadn't seen him today. However, a fat lady said that she saw him earlier chatting with the children. Then she handed the old lady something to give to Ray, a small thanks for his help. The old lady continues to look for Ray and asks some children. According to them, Ray said he was going to play with the seagulls and probably at the lighthouse. The old lady looked exhausted as she continued looking for Ray. Meanwhile, Ray looks at peace on top of the lighthouse. He was having a good time while feeding numerous seagulls. Dine, who's watching him, observes that they adore him. In response, Ray asked if she was enjoying it too since they were near the sea and there's so much water around. Then, Dine heard someone calling Ray. When they looked down, it was the old lady who was searching for him. The old lady is yelling for him, asking for his return because the Lord is calling for him. Ray responded that he'll head back right away. He immediately jumped from the lighthouse and then called for Sylphie. The spirit suddenly appears and excitedly asks Ray to play. The spirit used his power so that Ray could float in the air and land safely on the ground. After that, Sylphie asks him one more time to play, but Ray disagrees and apologizes because his father is calling for him. So he promised the spirit that he'll come back later. The old lady commented that Ray hadn't changed. She immediately came close to Ray and said that she understands that he was deeply loved by the spirits, but once he begins attending the academy, he mustn't use that power so openly in front of others. Ray smiled and understood her. In his mind, if words got out, it would definitely become a problem, because being blessed by the wind spirit and being loved by water spirits was so rare. The Kreutzer territory is governed by one of the Viscount houses of the kingdom of Ezelbite. It flourished as the kingdom's only maritime trade hub and holds the sole hereditary position of the Admiral of the Navy. Strictly speaking, a Viscount's rank does not warrant such authority or domain, but that too is thanks to the family's generations of spirit blessings. Still, excessive power invites scrutiny, just like the head of the house before him. Ray benefits more from being seen as just another person with a spirit blessing, not because he harbors any ill will towards the kingdom, but because the fewer seeds of conflicts, the better. It's not a spirit's favor because for him, Dine and Sylphie are good friends. Anyway, the old lady told him before he met his father. They should tidy up his hair because there's some bird bath water on it. Later on, when he arrived at their house, he quickly went to his father's room and knocked on the door. His father heard him and told him to get in. His father was the Viscount of the Kreutzer, Cain Kreutzer. The latter asks him when he is departing from the royal capital since the ceremony at the academy is coming up soon. In response, Ray told his father that he will be going on the day after tomorrow and planning to go alone. Cain supported him because he knew Ray would be fine. He also added that he traveled alone when he enrolled at the academy. Although on the way back, he has Rainesia with him, so they return by carriage. Cain laughs and teases him that if he meets someone nice, he is free to bring her back with him. The son makes it clear he is going to the academy to study, not to find a bride. More importantly, didn't he have something he wanted to discuss? Cain agreed and said that on Ray's way to the capital, he'll be passing through the Duke of Norfolk's territory. There are several Navy-related documents he'd like to deliver to His Grace, the Duke. Ray understood and asked if it would be better to hand those documents over in person. His father agreed, but since the Duke is a very busy man, he may not be home, so he could hand them to the Duchess instead. He also gave Ray a letter that he wrote. Ray asks his father if there's something wrong. Cain laughed and said no. He just wanted to make sure not to be disrespectful. Although confused, Ray understood his father. Later on, the day of his departure arrived. His father advised him to take care on his journey. His younger sister asked him to tell them all about life at the academy when he returned. His younger brother, who seems teary-eyed, asks him to come back soon. Their mother comforted the boy. It's Ray's departure. He must see him off with a smile. Ray knelt on the ground and told his brother Kevin that while he was away in the capital, he was counting on him to protect Raisha and their mother. Kevin stopped his tears and made a promise that he will protect their mother and big sister. But Raisha disagrees since he can't take Ray's place. So Ray told his sister to act a little more like a proper lady because she won't find a good match in the future if she keeps that way. Raisha gave him a look before winking, stating that she may not look like it, but she knows how to put on a good face. She also told her brother to do his best and find someone wonderful, like their mother. Ray seems confused about finding someone that her sister mentions. He asked her what she thought of the academy, but to their surprise, their mother told him that it's not every day he gets the chance to be around girls his age. Besides, he's their son, so they are sure he'll be super popular at the academy. His mother became serious and added that if the time ever comes when he wants to find his destined one, he just needs to follow the guidance of the spirits because that's how she and Cain met. Ray agrees and promises that he will. Then he rode his horse and waved goodbye to his family. Before he could go, Raisha told him to send them a letter once he arrived at the academy, while Kevin told his big brother to have a safe trip. Then he started to drive away. On his way, he passed by a carriage when a boy waved a hand at him, so he gave him a smile to acknowledge the gesture. He was not alone because Dine and Sylphie were with him. Sylphie seems to be having a good time riding the horse as they continue their journey. Then, they reach non-folks' territory. Dine asks him if he will be staying in that town for tonight. Ray agrees and says that he will be staying until the 23rd since he has an errand from his father. But before visiting, he had to tidy up his appearance first, so he needed to find an inn. Sylphie was confused because his master always looks well presented for him and looks cool. Upon hearing it, he thanked his two companion spirits because they made things a lot easier for him. To an average person, he probably doesn't even look like he's even on a long journey. But since he will have a meeting with a noble, he wants to be more extra cautious. Later on, Ray is neatly dressed and goes to the Nonfolk's house. A butler guides him to the living room and waits until Kara von Nonfolk arrives and introduces herself. She apologized to Ray because her husband is currently working in the royal capital, so she'll be entertaining him in her husband's place. In response, Ray thanked the lady and introduced himself as well. Then he gave the documents that his father told him to do. Over the cup of tea, Kara started their conversation and said that she heard he was in the middle of a journey. Ray agreed and said that he was on his way to the royal capital and enrolled in the Royal Academy this spring. Kara was happy to hear and said that her daughter was also going to the academy and told her daughter's name, Celialis. The academy has many sons and daughters of noble families enrolling, but Lady Celialis is exceptional among them. She is well known even before the entrance ceremony. Lady Celialis is the daughter of the Duke of Nonfolk and the fiancée of the first prince, the next king. In other words, she's the future queen candidate. From Ray's point of view, Lady Celialis is someone on a whole different level. Even at the academy, he doubts he'll have much chance to speak to her. Kara told him she had one request. The road from their territory to the capital, if it's alright with him. She asks if he will let Lady Celialis accompany him. Ray widened his eyes in shock. That's why Kara was worried if her daughter would be a bother to him. Ray was stammering while speaking, saying that her daughter was not a bother or anything. He wanted to say something, but Kara interrupted him and said that she will provide a carriage and attendants since she doesn't intend to impose on him at all. Hesitation was written all over Ray's face, so Kara said that she heard he was traveling alone, which means he possesses considerable strength and combat skills. Because on their way, there's always a risk of monsters or bandits who pass by. She also mentioned that she'd like not only to accompany her daughter on her journey, but also to stand by her side at the academy. She also hopes that they can become friends. Due to Celialis' position, there will be many who approach her with ulterior motives and those who try to sabotage her. She was hoping that, as a friend, he could support her even just a little. Upon hearing her, Ray seems hesitant because he wasn't sure if someone like him was fit for such a role, being a friend. Kara responded that from his demeanor and behavior, she can tell that he's not someone who fawns over people in power or tries to gain from being close to them. She believes that Ray would treat the lady not as the next queen, but simply as herself. Ray was confused because Kara might have overestimated him, as he was not like that. He was also in doubt if Lady Celialis would consider someone like him, whom she just met, to become her friend. So Kara suggests being just a travel companion for conversation along the way. If the lady dislikes him or he finds it uncomfortable, he can decline. Then she asks if he considers her favor. At first, Ray was having a second thought and didn't know what to say, but after a few seconds, he let out a sigh and agreed. He will accompany Celie to the capital as a guard, and during that time, Lady Celialis can decide if he is worthy of being her friend. Kara was happy to hear that he agreed. Ray was shocked when she suddenly called her daughter, who seemed to be just waiting outside. A door opened, and the lady came in. She gave a courtesy bow, greeted Ray, and introduced herself. Ray stood up and gave courtesy as well. He also added that he's been granted permission by Lady Kara to accompany her on her journey to the capital. Celialis seems not satisfied and finds it unpleasant to be greeted as if they were meeting for the first time. She asks Ray to rephrase his greetings. The latter was bewildered and stared at the lady. Then his eyes widen when the lady's face reminds him of someone who is similar to a little girl. He immediately asked if she was Celie and even glanced at her two big melons. The lady was blushing and told him not to stare because she felt embarrassed. Ray realized something, so he turned to Kara, who was laughing. She told him that he took a long time to notice and was starting to get a little impatient, because it's been 5 years since the last time they met. Back then, they were staying at the Kreuzer estate for 2 months while she worked, and Ray played with Celie a lot during that time. But since it was a business reception, they were being introduced as Carla and Celie. Ray recalled his father teasing and asked Lady Kara if his father was in it. The lady responded that she wouldn't say he was on it, but in the letter they received beforehand, it was mentioned that he didn't remember them. She apologized to Ray for reading it but couldn't resist playing a little trick. Celie interrupted and stated that she was disappointed at him for not noticing anything. Ray was speechless and didn't know what to do. That's why Lady Kara defended him. It's understandable that Ray didn't notice her since they met during a business party, unlike Celie, who played along with him. Besides, she used a magic tool to change her hair color back then. Yet, Celie was still mad for forgetting a childhood friend he spent 2 months with. Ray felt embarrassed and reasoned that Celie has become so beautiful since then. So he bowed and said that he deeply apologizes for not recognizing her sooner. Celie became more irritated because of his actions as he spoke too formally. She demands to call her Celie since they are friends. Ray wanted to say something, but Celie stopped him, so Ray turned to Lady Kara and asked for help. Hence, in Celie's mind, she was a little happy after hearing that she had gotten prettier. Later on, Lady Kara told Ray that he lost because when her daughter gets like that, she won't budge. She understands that Ray is being cautious since Celie is already engaged. Then she asks him to treat Celie as a friend, at least in informal settings. Ray was speechless, but he understood every word. Then he turned to Celie, extending his hand as he said that he was counting on her on their journey to the capital. Celie looks at his hand and recalls the time when they were still young. Back then, Ray told her that since they were friends, she was someone he wanted to protect. But since she was young back then, although she appreciates it, she refuses to be someone who only gets protected. If they are friends, she wants to stand beside him as his equal. Ray might think she was reckless, but that's how she wants it to be. In her young mind, she was surprised when Ray tickled her face with a leaf and said that he won't deny the reckless part. Then he smiled at her and said that that's what he loves about her. Ray might have forgotten those words, but she treasured those memories back then. Ray noticed that she fell into deep thoughts. That's why he called her name and asked if there's something wrong. Celie smiled and said that there was none. But in her mind, she's the fiancé of the next king, while Ray is the heir of a viscount. The path they walk will eventually diverge. But if she has even a little time to be by his side, then during that time, she wants to do the things she wants with him since it's his duty as her friend. They departed from Non-Folk's estate and started their journey to the academy. But the carriage stopped in the woods. Ray made a duel with a knight until that person lost his grip on his sword and fell on the ground. Ray pointed his sword against the person when someone announced that the match was over. Celie, along with the other guards, was surprised at that duel. The knight and Ray shake their hand. The knight was thankful and seemed happy because Ray got some real skill. No wonder Lady Kara entrusted him with Celie's protection. Ray told the person that the pleasure was his since the duel was a great learning experience. Another knight interrupted them and said that Ray's something for beating the best swordsman among them. He also added that his sword style is fascinating. Then he asked where on earth he learned those. Ray responded that it's a style he actually learned entirely from his father, the Viscount of the Kreuzer territory. The two guards were astonished because his father was the naval admiral Kane Kreuzer. There is no question for Ray being that strong, but the latter seems confused, so the guard explains that his father is pretty famous in the right circles. The legendary strength of the naval admiral. The guards noticed that he didn't hear any of his father's old war stories. Ray didn't know how to respond because in his mind, his father always told him that he had been a bit of a troublemaker back in his day, but he didn't say something like that, although he never took him seriously back then. The guards also added that when they first heard Ray was being added to the guard detail, some of them were complaining, wondering if they weren't enough. But after sparring with him, they completely changed their mind. It means they can entrust the prince's protection to him without any worry. They also ask him to spar with them again sometime. Ray agreed and said that it was a pleasure. Then they turn around and leave Ray and Celie. Ray commented that the knights on the guard detail are all such nice people. Celie agrees, but it would be better if they didn't call her princess since it is too embarrassing for her age. Ray looked at her and said that it couldn't help since she was a candidate to be the next queen. She'll have to get used to being called that more often. Celie pows and furrows her brow when Ray also calls her princess. She crossed her arms and stated that if she's going to be called that way, he'll just have to become her knight. Ray was astonished when Celie gave the command to accompany her for her launch. Ray wanted to oppose, but Celie stopped her, gave her a serious look and insisted on commanding him. Ray lost to her again and made a bow. They then sat on the grass with a basket full of different foods. While eating, Celie admits that she was surprised because she didn't know he was that strong. She asked if he was planning to major in swordsmanship at the academy. In response, Ray claims that it's his plan, but he was thinking of trying out all the basic courses he can, not just the swordsmanship. Then he'll continue with the ones that suit him best. He also added that probably he will end up focusing on swordsmanship and business, or maybe interspecies folklore and magical theory. His family's domain is the hub of maritime trade, and they have contact with other places, so he figured he should study up on it. Then he asked Celie about what major she's in. The latter stated that she thinks she'll take business as well, and swordsmanship too. She's actually quite decent with a sword herself, but she suddenly let out a sigh because she won't be able to take that many classes. Half of her day has to be devoted to her royal consort training. To lighten the mood, Ray asked if she was going to join the student council. His words made Celie more sad because she knew Prince Alex will almost certainly be an officer, so she has to join as well. But she admits she would rather not join. The thought of it is a little daunting for her. Ray assumes that Prince Alex and Celie aren't getting along very well, which made the latter become angry. She told him not to come out and ask something like that even if he's thinking it. Ray was dumbfounded and immediately apologized, but it didn't change Celie's mood and admit that she can't shake the feeling that His Highness is avoiding her. She held him in the highest esteem, but whenever they met, he was so distant. She thought she might have done something to offend him but can't think of anything. Ray sympathizes with her since it's tough. Celie came up with an idea that maybe he could be the knight who protects her from all worries, but she was immediately turned down by Ray because he had his own people to look after and had to return to his own domain after graduation. Celie was still sad about him being straightforward. To wipe the sadness on her face, Ray told her that while they were at the academy, he'd do everything he could to help her. Although it was difficult for them to meet up like that because she was engaged to the first prince, still, he'll always be there to listen as a friend from school. Because of his words, Celie was happy and counting on him. She also mentioned that they might happen to take the same class and happen to sit next to each other, and find there are no other empty tables, so just happen to have shared one. Upon hearing these words, it seems Ray was having a hard time grasping it mentally. However, when Celie said when those things might just have happened, that she was counting on him, Ray smiled and told her to go easy on him. Then Celie's knights call for them since it's about time to depart. Later on, they start their journey again. Knights were on the front, while Ray was on the back of the carriage with his horse, enough to see Celie. After a while, they reached the royal capital. Ray waved his goodbye to the knights. When Silly heard it, she was surprised that he would be leaving so soon. Ray explained that he was going to head straight for the academy's dorm. It looks like she wants Ray to stay. That's why Silly offers to stop by their estate in the capital, where he could have even stayed the night since they have plenty of rooms. But Ray declined her offer and said that he needs to check on his luggage that should have arrived. He has some other things to take care of before the schools start. Silly understood him and decided to just meet him at the entrance ceremony. Ray agrees with her and makes sure to come and find her. They wave goodbye at each other until the carriage walks on. After that, he rode on his horse and went to the Royal Academy. He couldn't help but smile when he saw the school that he was about to enroll in. He assumed that the dorm should be on the same ground, so he quickly went to a path that led to the place. As soon as he entered, a woman immediately accommodated him and welcomed him to the Easelbite Royal Academy. He was told that his room is 305 on the 3rd floor, and his luggage has already been delivered to his room. The woman also said that it is still spring break, so the cafes and restaurants on the campus are closed, but the dormitory dining hall is open where he can have his meals there, or at an eatery off campus. Ray understood and went straight to his room. As soon as the door closes, the two spirits call for him and ask to see the room, so he told them that it's safe to come out. The two immediately emerged and excitedly scanned the room. Ray went to the window and opened it where he could see the Royal Academy. He thought that his 3 years of academy life were about to begin. He asked himself what kind of person he'll have become by the time he graduates. Dine responds that he will surely be a fine gentleman. Ray smiled, hoping he would become one. Then he rolled up his sleeve and decided to clean the room and unpack and get everything organized. Sylphie, who's having a good time playing on the bed, said that he was helping with his luggage. Ray seems worried because Sylphie might use his wind to carry it. Morning came, and Ray was being woken up because of Sylphie. He went to the window. He was mesmerized by how nice the scenery was. Sylphie asks about what his errand is for today. In response, he said that he was already done with tidying up his room. So first, he'll get breakfast at the cafeteria, and then go shopping for daily necessities. After that, he had to pay a visit to the marble company as requested. Sylphie was confused because of its work. While changing clothes, he explained that it's an errand from his father. He really asked him to do too much, but he gets that it's tough for him since he rarely gets a chance to come to the capital himself. Later on, he went to the cafeteria and had himself some sausage, eggs, hot tea, and bread with it. He looked for a table and was ready to eat. There are only 5 students in the cafeteria, but it seems they have their own world. He noticed it. In his mind, the entrance ceremony hasn't even happened yet, and the students are already split into noble and commoner groups. After eating, he took his dishes and went to the counter. He thanked the lady and said that their food was delicious. The lady seemed surprised, yet she thanked Ray for telling her. Ray was taken aback when the lady asked if he's a new student because he is new to the lady. He agrees and asks if she doesn't happen to remember every student's face. The lady laughed and said that not every single student, but when one works in the cafeteria every day, one will start to get a feel for things. The lady also added that the line on his uniform sleeves can tell what year they're in by looking at those. Ray understood her, so the lady continued and said that she can usually tell if someone's a noble or a commoner just by their mannerisms and attitude. She seems to have caught Ray's interest and asks which she thinks he is. The lady analyzed him and found that he's a commoner, yet his manners are too refined. But he's too casual too to be a noble. Finally, the lady said that he's a merchant, or son of some well-to-do family. Ray laughs at her because he's not a merchant, because he's technically a noble, though he's just a country noble from the backwoods. The lady was taken aback and immediately asked for forgiveness because she went and said rude things to a young noble. She also added that he was so friendly, that's why she assumed he was a commoner. Ray immediately said that it wasn't rude at all and there's no need to apologize. Besides, his parents are nobles, but that doesn't make him anyone special. The lady was confused and found him strange. However, she advised him to be careful because there are some folks around there who are real elitists. Ray keeps her words in mind and promises to be careful. The lady remembered her daughter and said that she is starting at the Royal Academy as a student. Her name is Anna, and she's so proud of her getting into that academy as a commoner. If she gets a chance, she asks Ray to be her friend. When Ray agreed, she warned him not to make his move on her daughter no matter how handsome he was. Ray made it clear to the woman that he was there to study seriously and wouldn't do something like that, but if anything happened, he said that he could at least lend her daughter a hand. Then he waved goodbye to the lady. When Ray was gone, the lady thought that her daughter did seem to like his type and was more worried about her getting carried away with him. On his way out, the two spirits were too excited to go out, so Ray told them to be quiet until he was done with his business. The two spirits agree with him. As he went out of the gate, he waved goodbye to the guard. He walks towards the capital. On his way, he can't help but be amazed at the place because it really is something else aside from the many huge buildings around. He continues to wander around and observe that the place is so lively and seems like people there are living pretty stable lives. He continued to walk, yet getting confused looking for the marble company, so he took out a piece of paper and looked for the direction. Then he noticed a signboard hanging on the wall of a building. But as he walked close to the building, he was stunned by how huge the building was. He continues to enter the building and observes that the place is bigger than he expected. He felt embarrassed because people inside were wearing fabulous clothes. He was worried if it was okay to come to that place with his casual clothes. Anyway, he starts to think if he remembers it correctly, the head of that company is the brother of Enzel, the chief of their commercial guild. He was wondering if they look alike. While doing so, his eyes widened when a fat man suddenly came and apologized to him for keeping him waiting. The man introduced himself as Helmut, the head of the marble company. Ray was speechless, thinking there's no difference between them except their hair. Nevertheless, he made a courtesy call and told his name. that he came to greet him on his father's behalf. He also told Helmut that he was surprised by how much he resembled Lord Enzel. The man laughs because he gets those words a lot. Then he asks Ray about his brother, if he is properly fulfilling his duties as the chief of the Kreutzer Commercial Guild. In response, Ray told him that they are always in debt to Enzel because the prosperity and development of Kreutzer could be impossible without the guild's cooperation. Because of his words, Helmut was amazed by how composed he was for his young age. He also said that his brother praised him highly in his letters and said that he has the makings of an ocean king who will one day rule the Magnolia Inland Sea. Ray was shy because being an ocean king is far too much. Enough with the pleasantries, Helmut became serious and asked what he wished to discuss. Ray elaborated that there are several ancient ruins within Kreutzer territory, but since many are on uninhabited islands teeming with monsters, they haven't been able to make much progress with excavations and looking for people who can help with that. Upon hearing it, Helmut suggested that it would be best to request support from the Adventurers Guild in the royal capital. When Helmut asks if he should put in a good word for Rai, the latter immediately agrees. They have a guild in Kreutzer, but it is small compared to the main one in the capital. They also need to appraise the magic stones and artifacts excavated from the ruins, so it would be a great help if Helmut knew anyone suitable for that problem as well. The man understood that it would likely be faster to have the Adventurers Guild assist with finding an appraiser as well, so he decided to prepare a letter of introduction for him. Helmut can help, but be excited because his brother will have all sorts of rare new goods coming his way again. It means their company and the people of Kreutzer must maintain an even closer relationship. Ray agreed with him and stated that they are always indebted to the commercial guild. To seal the agreement, they gave each other a handshake, looking forward to their continued partnership. After the talk, Helmut sent him off and waved his goodbye. As soon as he stepped out of the marble company, Sylphie suddenly popped out. He was happy because the hardest part is over now, but it seems Ray was not yet finished with the work because he plans to visit the Adventurers Guild another day. But for now, he thinks of wandering around the town and doing some shopping. Sylphie was so excited when Ray suddenly stopped when he heard something. He asked Sylphie to bring the sounds from the area for him. Then he closed his eyes and clearly heard someone yelling, trying to stop someone. The voice was giving orders not to come close to it. The voice also asks who sent them and tries to kidnap him. But the voice of the kidnapper didn't tell and said it is client confidentiality. Upon hearing that, Ray furrowed his brow because that kidnapping was really happening in the middle of the city. He decided to help and asked Sylphie to show him where that voice was coming from. On the other hand, the voice came from Yuri Anastasia, who seems to be off guard. She yells at those kidnappers and asks for what they want. She even mocks them for ganging up on a single girl and challenges them that if they're real men, they'll fight her one-on-one. But the 5 kidnappers didn't fall for her words because they already did their homework on her. They knew that she was planning to use her precious holy magic. They insult her for being a saintess, clicking her tongue because it's unseemly. Yuri accepted her tough luck. She grew up in a downtown orphanage and is now cornered by 5 assassins. If it were one-on-one, she might be able to manage with her holy magic, but 5 of them at once is too much. If something happens to her, it'll cause trouble for her foster father. She has to do something. Then, one of the 5 men told his companion not to let their guards down, so they started to walk towards her to catch her. Yuri closed her eyes as if accepting her fate, but a wind suddenly materialized, confusing the kidnappers. Then, in an instant, Yuri was already gone from their sight. When they looked above, they saw her there with Ray, who helped her. Yuri seemed still puzzled about what had happened and asked when she got on the roof. She inquired who he was and wondered if he had come to save her. Ray agreed that he had planned on saving her and told her that they needed to get away from the assassins. Yuri was confused on how they could get away with them. Ray smiled and told her to leave it to him. He apologized in advance before carrying her. Yuri was flustered at his sudden action, and when he jumped, she wondered what was going on. Her worried face turned to a happy one after seeing a bunch of birds joining them. While Ray continued jumping from one roof to another, Yuri asked if they were flying or bouncing, but it didn't matter which of it, because it was amazing. When they stopped at a safe place, Yuri was blushing and thanked Ray for saving her. Then she introduced herself to him. Ray introduced himself as well. They sit on the edge when Yuri remembers the thing earlier, so she asks Ray if they were flying and what kind of levitation magic he used. Ray explained that it wasn't magic, but the power of a wind spirit. Yuri was happy to hear it because she felt there was a wind swirling around when they were flying. As of now, she could feel there was a breeze playing nearby. Ray was shocked because it's rare for Sylphie to take a liking to someone. Now he was curious who the girl was, so he asks Yuri if she can sense the spirit's presence. In response, Yuri said that she sensed just a little. Ray became serious and asked Yuri who were those guys from before, because it seems like they knew her and were trying to kidnap her. Yuri hesitates to tell him because she's worried it'll cause him trouble. Ray didn't force her, but he was glad if Yuri did, since it'll be easier for him to handle things if he knew the situation. Yuri agrees with him. She starts to tell her name, an adopted daughter of the noble house Anastasia. When Ray realized that she came from a count's house and was the daughter of a count, he immediately bowed and apologized for being terribly rude. Yuri stopped him since she was just adopted and originally an orphan. It was just by chance that a count's family took her in. She also added that those men from before were probably sent by her foster father's rivals. People say that by adopting her, he'll become the next archbishop, and there are people who are desperate to stop that from happening. Ray was confused on why adopting her would make him the next archbishop. Yuri explains that it's a very presumptuous thing to say, but in public, she's known as the saintess. Ray widens his eyes upon hearing that she's a saint. Yuri continues that she received a divine oracle and can use holy magic, though she's not that special. It's just that her foster father, who is currently a cardinal, has a daughter with the power of a saintess. But Rei interrupted her and assumed that it elevated the father's position as well. Yuri exclaimed that her father has nothing to do with that. Her father is not raising her because she's the saintess or for any reason like that. In fact, he's protecting her so her power isn't used like that. She gritted her teeth and claimed right before Rei's face that her father truly cares for her and let her attend the academy to protect her too. Rei deeply apologized and reasoned that he didn't mean to speak ill of her foster father. He also added that the two seemed to have a wonderful relationship. Yuri agrees with him because her foster father was a very kind man. She continues that despite being a count and a cardinal, he treats all the parentless orphans with kindness without discrimination. That's the reason she doesn't want to cause him any worry. So she asked Rei to keep the whole accident a secret. Rei was worried about if those kidnappers attacked again. Yuri told him that she'll be fine since she will be starting at the academy. She was so sure that they won't be able to get to her easily when she's surrounded by so many other students. Speaking of the academy that she mentioned, Rei was curious if that happened to be the Royal Academy. When Yuri agrees, he tells him that he's actually set to enroll there too. Yuri was happy to hear that he was going to the same academy as her savior. Rei stops her because the savior is laying it on a bit thick. Yuri insisted since it was the truth. If the savior is not good for Rei, she changes it for the hero. Rei thought it was worse, so he retaliated and told her that if she was going to say that, since she was the saint, he would start to call her Lady Yuri. The latter refuses and decides to call him Lord Rei, since it's natural for her savior. Rei wanted to argue with that, but then their eyes landed on each other and simultaneously laughed. Rei apologizes and states that in the academy, if it is okay with her, he will call her Yuri. The latter smiles sweetly and agrees with him. Later on, Yuri realized that she needed to get down from the roof soon. Thus, Rei offers his hand to Yuri. Even so, his eyes widened when Yuri said that it's like a waste to just go straight down. Then she asks him if he can do that whoosh thing from before one more time, but he declined and said that they're just going down. But in his mind, it was Sylphie who was insisting one more time. It seems the spirit just thinks that it's all a game. She doesn't mind a bit. Finally, the Azelbite Royal Academy entrance ceremony has arrived. While Rei was fixing his clothes, Dine told him it had finally begun. For the next 3 years, Rei's plan was to dedicate himself fully to studying and making friends. Sylphie seemed excited by his words about making friends, so Rei explained that it means creating friendships. Sylphie hopes Rei will make a lot of it. Rei decided to go, but advised the two to stay invisible. In the academy, everyone seems excited, especially Alex Ezelbite. He can't help but smile at the fact that the academy arc is finally starting. The entrance ceremony that he's been waiting for so long. Back then, when he woke up, he found himself in the body of a 5-year-old prince sleeping on a luxurious bed. He was bewildered being in a child's body. He was pretty sure he was an 18-year-old high school student. But right now, he was Alex Ezelbite, the first prince of the Ezelbite kingdom. Then, he remembered that he had been in an accident on the day of his graduation, which means he probably reincarnated and got into a different world. 5 years worth of memories as a prince flooded in, separate from his 18 years of life. More accurately, it's like the 18 years of his past life were added to the memories of the 5-year-old prince. Based on the combined memory, the world is exactly like the one from the game he played extensively, the real fantasy. It's a world where Prince Alex is one of the several protagonists because the game had a multi-story system where one can choose from 7 characters. Prince Alex is the most popular and the only character with a harem root among them. He looked in the mirror and saw that he had blue eyes and blonde hair, which was the picture of a perfect prince. He thought that he was 16 at the start of the game. If that is really the game's world, then he already knows everything that will happen. That means that the world is his to command. He was delighted and jumped into bed because his life is now a guaranteed win. The butler saw that on him, so the old man asked if he had bad dreams. In his mind, there are definitely bad endings in the game's story. For example, Prince Alex is dethroned by his half-brother Siegfried, who becomes the king, and Alex runs away to become an adventurer. But that only happens if he makes bad choices. He already knew the upcoming scenarios and the correct answer to the choices. If he does it right, he should be able to choose the harem route, the ideal harem he wants. If he works on raising all his parameters from the age of 5, he might meet the conditions. Even if he can't get the harem, at least he should be able to reach a true ending with one heroine. He bid goodbye to his gloomy past life, to the 20 years without a girlfriend, because a glorious, popular prince's life lies before him. His deep thoughts were interrupted by Eric and Aries. Aries was glad that he could attend the academy with his childhood friends, hoping they would be in the same class. Eric said that if he and Alex ranked first and second on the entrance exam, together they could dominate any class competition. As future leaders of the country, he urged his friends to show everyone their excellence. Aries agrees that he may fall behind the two in academics, but he'll greatly help with the sword. Alex smiles because he must strive not to fall behind and become a worthy king. The two agree that Eric will support him as his right hand, while Aries will be the sword protecting them both. Alex pretends to be happy, but inside, it would make him die of embarrassment for their cheesy line. That is the world of real fantasy. What would have felt cringy before now feels just right. That's the kind of confidence a guaranteed winner character can have. The long-awaited academic arc begins, and the story made just for him starts right in the Royal Academy. As soon as they entered the academy, he thought the girls would swarm over him since he was the prince. Yet his thinking was the opposite. Students were busy looking at the bulletin to find their class. He seemed disappointed and reasoned that maybe everyone was curious about their class. It's not a surprise they're not paying attention to their surroundings. With that in mind, he told Aries that it's too crowded and he can't even get close to the bulletin board. While Ray was trying to find his classroom, he heard a voice shouting to get out of the way because the first prince was about to view the notice board. Alex was shocked because it looked like Aries had the wrong idea. He knew the character bio of Aries, definitely short-tempered and all muscle. But still, he looks like he is trying to sabotage and ruin his image. Alex was worried because all eyes turned on him. If he follows Aries while everyone's watching, he might raise his favorability. So he cleared his throat and told everyone that it's fine, since everyone wants to know their own class. Once they check, they can leave. No need to panic. Aries seemed to disagree and wanted to say something, but Alex immediately cut him off and told him that it's fine. He also mentioned that princes or commoners were all academy students, so he couldn't be given special treatment. His mind was cheering for nailing those words. Now, in the eyes of the people, he's a tolerant prince while gently correcting his subordinates' rudeness. But he was surprised when Celie suddenly came, scolding Aries for being an example of a bad noble. Celie was a flawless heroine, beautiful, and with a noble background. She was his fiancée. Alex is not good with her. She's pretty yet intense, so he prefers a quieter girl. Celie still scolds Aries when Alex interrupts her because he plans to handle it like a prince and respond graciously. He told Celie to let it go since other students had already watched them. Besides, Aries seems to be reflecting, so they must forgive him. Yet it looked like Aries was not while Celie was still mad. Alex was confused why he had to be the one calming people down. He told the two to make up and check the board together. However, Eric had already checked the board. He said Alex, Aries, and he were in the same class. In frustration, Alex suddenly held his head when he heard Celie was also in their class. He punched into the air because those unscripted actions are too unpredictable. Eric saw what he was doing, so he asked if something was wrong. Alex stopped and thought maybe now was a good time to return the topic to class talk. He told Eric there's nothing wrong and tried to put a smile on his face. He asked if anyone else in their class caught Eric's eye. Eric's stepsister and the daughter of the Anastasia family were also in their class. Alex notices this part is following the script, and even though he knew from his past life that the Anastasia family only had a son, he still asks about it. Eric agreed, but the Anastasia family adopted a girl a year ago. Supposedly she's a vessel fit for a saint. Upon hearing it, Alex pretends that he loves to meet her, but in his mind, he already knows that the adopted daughter is a saint and one of the heroine candidates. Eric continued by saying that the adopted was originally a commoner from an orphanage. Eric advised him to create a gap in his association with her since he had noble blood. Alex knew Eric would say those words because he's a noble elitist, but as an understanding prince, he should rebuke that stance. He was about to say something to Eric, but Celie cut him off. She asked Eric if he was seriously looking down on a fellow student just because she's a commoner. She reminded him that the adopted was a saint blessed by God and now a count's daughter. He must not insult someone like that. Alex was in terror because those words that she used would surely piss off the prideful Eric even more. Seeing his four-eyed friend was about to explode, Alex cleared his throat before stating he understood Eric just said those words to tease him. However, he wants them to understand that he's been blessed by the gods. Alex turns to Celie and advises her not to raise her voice in front of the other students since that's not how a proper lady behaves. He asks the two not to bicker on such an important day as the entrance ceremony. He calmly told them they must forgive and make up for his sake. Yet in his mind he rejoiced because he nailed it for being a gentle and understanding prince who brings peace. He was on the moon when he heard the two understood and obeyed him. Alex knew it was a vital intro scene because he would meet the heroines in the next scene, but his long wait was crushed when Celie excused herself. Even Aries and Eric waved goodbye after checking their class. He is worried as the next scene is where he meets the heroine. He was confused about whether he had messed something up. Ray observes things getting complicated at Alex's group. Sylphie asks if he wants her to call out Celie, but Ray refuses. Although he was curious, he was not in the place to get involved. He decided to talk to Celie later. He kept observing the surroundings when his gaze turned to the man analyzing the board. The man might sense that someone is staring at him, so he turns around and asks Ray. The latter apologizes and explains that he has similar hair to the first Prince Alex, so he found himself staring. The man responded that they have different hair and eye colors. The man also said that Ray has a keen eye. The latter immediately bowed and made an apology for being terribly rude and not realizing the man was Prince Siegfried, the second son of the Ezelbite kingdom, and who happens to be Alex's half-brother. Siegfried let it slide. Besides, there is no need to suddenly be so formal. Inside the schools, they're just fellow students. Then he offered his hand. Ray agrees and introduces himself as Ray Kreutzer, heir to the Viscounty of Kreutzer. Siegfried realized that he was the son of a noble, but if Ray didn't know who he was, he assumed he must be from a rural territory. Ray let out a sigh and admitted that he is from a rural town that takes a month just to travel one way to the capital. That's why he has no ties to the capital's power struggles and no interest in that sort of thing anyway. Ray was confused when Siegfried repeated the word, so he made it clear that he wasn't interested even the slightest. His jaw dropped when Siegfried suddenly put his hand on his shoulder because the man found him interesting. He kept on laughing since he couldn't believe his words. Then he realized he was being rude, so he apologized. since they were in the same class, D, which makes them classmates. He encouraged Ray to just call him Sieg and talk to him normally, drop the forced polite act. As he decided, Ray is going to be his friend. They shake hands, but to their surprise, another hand suddenly puts itself on their hand. A girl who's in class D as well, asking them to get along with them. The girl let out a sharp sigh when the two didn't know her, so she introduced herself as Melty Suzerain. Siegfried seemed to know that last name, which is the great Archmage Suzerain, and heard he had a disciple among the new students this year, so he wondered if that disciple was this girl. When Melta didn't respond and just gave him a questioning look, Ray apologized and didn't know what to call her, Ms. Suzerain or just Melta. The girl told him that it's just Melta. Siegfried continued to ask if she needed something. Melta told them that since they were both in Class D, they're all heading to the same place. If they're going to the classroom, better take her with them. The three didn't notice that they were still holding their hands when another girl arrived. The girl was Yuri Anastasia, the Saintess, adopted daughter of the Count House Anastasia. Yuri asks Ray if the handshake was the new style. She assumed that there was something interesting going on. Melta explained that it's a gesture to shake hands with the new people in their class. Yet it seems Yuri couldn't understand. On their way, Melta said that Yuri was in Class A. Yuri refused and wanted to be in Class D just like them. They didn't notice that someone was watching them. The person was pointing to the prince and their entourage along with the prince's fiancée. He even saw the second prince and the heroine candidates, the Saintess and the Archmage disciple. His gaze turned to Ray, who's unfamiliar, and he assumed he's just a background character. He commented that the first prince is rather underwhelming. Could this be a route centered on the second prince? This mysterious person skipped the prologue in his past life, so he wouldn't know, but what happens next is what is truly important. Now, he was confused about who the protagonist of this story was. The first prince, the second prince, or could it be a route where the heroine becomes the queen? However, Ray seems to have sensed someone was watching them, but he immediately dismissed it and assumed that it's just his imagination. Then the two spirits talked in his mind and said that he made quite a few school friends on his very first day. Ray agrees, but as the heir to a mere viscounty, he feels complicated to be surrounded by people so far above his station. He just hopes he can have a peaceful, uneventful school life. Melty didn't recall a single thing from when she was a baby, but from what she has been told, she was once an abandoned child, left alone in the depths of the forest, and was picked up by a whim suzerain, an eccentric, reclusive person who detested human contact, the great Archmage Suzerain. She has no idea why she decided to take care of a helpless infant like her. That mystery has never been solved. And so, the child raised by Suzerain grew up to be a fine example of someone utterly incapable of social interaction and lacking communication skills. One day, after Suzerain observed her, she told the kid to go to school. Melty was confused because of all the people. Suzerain, who had absolutely no social skills, was the one who told her to go to school and learn social skills. She did as she was told and went to the academy. Students were uproarious, trying to check their names on the bulletin board, yet Melty was sitting alone in the corner. She also wants to check her name on the assignment board, but might be thrown out of the crowd since she is too small. At first, she wanted to eliminate obstacles with her magic, but she decided not to do so and ceased her power because it was bad. She'll get in trouble if she causes a commotion in the academy. She'll be kicked out of the academy, and if she gets kicked out, Suzerain will punish her. She knew it could lead her to danger, so she just sat and waited for the crowds to be clear. Then the first prince group suddenly came. Ares yelled to move and get out of their way. She got her chance when she saw that the crowd cleared the way on the bulletin. She immediately rushed towards the bulletin. Some people seem tough, but it shouldn't be a problem if she doesn't get too close. She analyzed the bulletin where classes A and B were separated in the list. She saw that there were 2 people with Von something names in class A. She remembers that Suzerain mentioned being careful around anyone with a Von something name. She wondered why he was supposed to be wary of those people. Suzerain might mention why, yet she must have forgotten since she really doesn't care. After checking her class, she didn't know what to do next. She gave herself 3 options. First, go home and take a nap. The second is to go home and eat. The third one is to go home and have a snack, but none of it feels right somehow. While in deep thought, a man suddenly spoke from behind her, asked if they were in the same class D, and guessed they were classmates. She turned around to see who it was since she was in the same class. The people are Siegfried and Ray. If she follows them, she will definitely not go wrong. She saw that the two gave a handshake. She realized that when you're classmates, they are supposed to start with a handshake and greet each other. That will be perfect for leveling up her social skills. That day is her lucky day, so she walks close to Siegfried and Ray. The two were taken aback when she suddenly put her hands on them and announced she was in the same class. She encouraged them to get along. While Ray, Siegfried, and Yuri were confused, Melta raised her hands, glad that her quota for that day was done. Ray, Siegfried, Melta, and Yuri were walking down the hallway trying to find their designated rooms. When the 3 found their room, Yuri didn't want to leave and seemed about to cry. She immediately hugged Melta as she really wanted to stay with her longer, but since she was not in the same class as the 3, they left her outside the room. Inside, Siegfried was calmly waiting for their teacher when 3 girls noticed him and couldn't help but stare at him. Other students also find Melta adorable since she is too tiny, while no one pays attention to Ray. Furthermore, their teacher finally arrived and introduced herself as Miriam Stanford. She'll be guiding the whole class for the next 3 years. Her specialty is magical system theory. The elective course on magical systems is under her instruction, so she wanted them to feel free to sign up if interested. She told everyone to start with their introduction, and we'll go in order from the front row. So one by one, students introduced themselves until it was Siegfried's turn. Girls were curious if he was from royalty. Siegfried stated that he was the second prince of the Azelbite kingdom. Even though he's royalty, he's still just a student like everyone else. He also added that he would be happy if they treated him as a classmate regardless of his status or noble lineage. He has decent confidence in both his swordsmanship and magic. He encouraged everyone to push each other to improve and do their best as a class. Everyone was listening to his words, and even Ray was overwhelmed by his presence. After the speech, Siegfried turned to Rai and gave him a smile. But the girl students misunderstood him and thought that he waved at them. After that, Miriam calls Melte, who looks sleepy. A student found her cute when she stood up since she's too tiny, while the others were confused about whether she was the same age as them. Melte heard them but didn't pay attention and started to introduce herself. She also mentioned that her special skill is original magic. Then she immediately sat down. Students were confused because of her short speech, as it seemed they were waiting for more. Ray couldn't help but smile because it was really the classic Melte who was entirely in her own world. After that, Ray noticed 4 students in front of him and heard some say that there's no one impressive or even stands out in the class. The person also added that Siegfried is the only one who could match Lord Flagga. Because of their words, the man in the center couldn't help but smile. He decided to take the turn since the previous student's introduction was finished. He stood up conceitedly and asked to be allowed to demonstrate how he stands above those common classmates. He introduced himself as Flagga Landone. Their house ranks among the nation's most distinguished noble families, and they intend to live up to that prestigious name. He also mentioned that they can expect great things from him. He plans to represent their class and run for the student council. He gave Siegfried a side glance and said there was no doubt the latter was aiming for that same position, but he was sure he had no intention of holding back in that competition. Flagga continued by stating that those of noble birth like himself are naturally superior. Commoners and lower-ranking nobles should at least show him the respect he deserves. When he was finished, his 3 subordinates rejoiced at his speech, while Siegfried seemed bored and sighed because he didn't care and had no plan to compete with Flagga. Furthermore, it was Ray's turn, so he stood up and introduced himself. He stated that his family's domain is quite far from the capital, and that it was his first time visiting the royal capital. He might cause some trouble as a country bumpkin, but he was hoping to get along with everyone. While some of the students clapped their hands after his speech, Flagga mocked him since he had never heard of the Kreuzer family. He even calls Ray a country boy and asks to be his vassal. Flagga changed his mood when Ray turned down his offer. Then the latter was in terror when Flagga suddenly burst into anger and shouted at him for rejecting his generous offer. He even insulted him for being a mere viscount to defy a marquis like him. Ray didn't talk back. Instead, he calmly told Flagga that the arrangements would benefit neither of them. He recalls that the Lansdowne family's domain is on the southern side of the royal capital, while their territory is far to the north. It takes 2 whole months to travel back and forth from the capital. Making someone from such a distant land a vassal doesn't seem practical. Flagga smirked at his explanation and insisted that when he was under the protection of their family, he'd have influence in the royal capital. He even boasted that his father was a former council member of the Lords. Upon hearing that he was gaining influence in the capital, Ray said he was even less interested, which made Flagga angry. Ray explains that after graduation, he plans to return to his territory, because even if he did gain influence in the royal capital, the distance is far too great and there's no real opportunity to use it. He smiles at Flagga and suggests offering those to someone who actually cares about capital politics. Ray widened his eyes when Flagga angrily said he was offering to make him one of his subordinates. Yet he refuses, saying he has no interest and sees no benefit. Flagga turns his head to the side after someone laughs. It was Siegfried who insulted Flagga for losing to Ray. He stated that it's true that becoming his vassal wouldn't benefit Ray. If anything, aligning with the non-folk family would make more sense, since their territory is much closer. Not to mention that the birthplace of Her Majesty the Queen Dowager and his elder brother's fiancé comes from that family. There's no need to rely on the distant Lansdowne estate. Upon hearing those words, Flagga was furious. He gave a deadly look at Siegfried and Ray. When no one speaks, Miriam asks everyone to conclude their little arguments. She stood up and was to give a heads up to everyone. She stated that the Royal Academy operated on a meritocracy. Whether it's magic, swordsmanship, or academics, completion isn't prohibited. They are free to challenge each other as much as they like. However, personal dispute is strictly forbidden. If one must challenge someone, they must do it properly, following the official rules. It doesn't matter whether you are a commoner, a low-ranking noble, or a high-ranking noble. Win and you're strong. Lose and you're weak. Their parents' status won't protect them. She makes sure that the students fully understand the rule. Anyway, she called the next person to continue with the introduction. Ray was confused about whether he was saved. He wished Miriam had stepped in sooner and wondered if she had waited for the perfect moment to make it more effective. Then he observed that someone was staring at him, so he looked down and saw that it was the ugly Flagga, still furious. Later on, Ray let out a sigh of relief when the class ended, but was startled when Flagga slammed the desk and told him not to get cocky just because he got some petty noble titles. Ray didn't talk back and let it slide. Then he heard Siegfried on the side laughing. He furrowed his brow and asked if he was enjoying the commotion. In response, Siegfried apologized and told him that Flagga has an older brother who is incredibly talented, so he has no authority at home. That's probably the reason why he throws his weight around outside, flaunting his status like that. He likely assumed Ray would start wagging his tail in submission if he flashed his noble rank. Ray crosses his arms and responds that he'd wag his tail and accept losing if it were based on actual skill. But bowing down just because of inherited authority, that's a no. Siegfried agreed and commented, "That's what's so odd about him, because most people would wag their tails and grovel in delight if a high-ranking noble spoke to them. It's rare for someone to reject that offer, like those who keep following Flogga like a dog." Ray says he can't stand people who rely on their parents' power to act superior. It's not like they're impressing themselves. That's why Siegfried was confused, since he was the heir of his family, but he didn't hold any official title. In response, Ray claims he's not a Viscount yet, but has a major naval title. Siegfried was surprised because he was in the military, and an officer. Ray continued by saying that though his father is his superior, he works him to the bone. Still, even as a major, he has no subordinates, and is more like a lone soldier who assists freely during emergencies. He also added that he has participated in pirate hunts and monster extermination. Siegfried couldn't believe it. He gave Ray a tap on his shoulder because he found him an interesting guy. Lucky for him, he got a cool friend on his first day. He was happy, while Ray seemed uncertain whether catching his attention was good or bad luck for him. Being around Siegfried means getting noticed, whether he likes it or not. Siegfried seriously told him that he really doesn't care about his title as the second prince because he actually appreciates it. So even without him, Ray couldn't avoid standing out, so he must consider that a prophecy. His words make Ray more worried because he doesn't like the sound of it. After all, it might happen. Siegfried advises that it's not a matter of prediction because he is already friends with the saint and the disciple of a grand mage. Like it or not, he was born under a star that makes him stand out. Ray was sweating while listening to him, because what if he said he's also friends with the future queen candidate? He was curious about how he was going to react to it. Melty tagged his clothes for attention, so he turned around and asked her what was wrong. But to his surprise, Melta yells at him, demanding more about the monster hunt he mentioned earlier. He didn't know where to turn his head, because Melta insisted on hearing everything, including the pirate raids. While Siegfried seems nonchalant, it is unclear whether he was angry, because his concern is for him to spill everything since he wants to hear the details. Ray seems caught off guard. Ultimately, he told them to grab some food and take their time. Meanwhile, in the A class, a homeroom teacher named Ernest von Lonsuna welcomes his students. He told everyone that he serves as the head of the year. He was looking forward to working with them for the next 3 years. He continues to say that the academy has always been based on meritocracy. There are many ways to prove one's abilities, but the most important is the class competition. First, each level competes to determine the top class. Then, the winners go on to a grade competition to decide the academy's strongest. Each class selects 5 of its most outstanding students to represent it. They need to strive to be chosen as one of the 5. The competition is in the fall, so there's still time. They have to make sure that they train hard every day. Then he announced their introduction and will start from the front row. Celie listened attentively to their teacher while Alex was nervous about introducing himself. Celie thinks that since Prince Alex, Ares, and Eric were in Class A, she concluded that they probably would be chosen, including her and the saint, Yuri. For the reserved member, she was certain Eric's sister would be selected, which means the team is already decided. This Class A is full of high-ranking nobles and their children, so the competition is obviously rigged from the start. Their homeroom teacher, Ernest, is the Queen's brother and Prince Alex's uncle. Of course, Ernest will be biased. The competition has not yet started, but she is already worried about how things will unfold. Then she suddenly remembers Ray and what he might have been doing. She was surprised when Eric praised Alex for his excellent introduction. If Prince Alex's turn is over, she might get lost in her thoughts. On the other hand, Alex seemed calm, yet he was sweating because the introduction was nerve-wracking for him. The game never had scenes with that much detail, but he was hoping he managed to introduce himself like a proper prince. Nevertheless, it looks like he nailed it based on Eric's face of approval. Alex remembers that one of the heroines, the saint, should be in his class, so he turned his head back and forth to scan every student until his gaze fell on Yuri Anastasia, who was making the introduction. According to Yuri, people call her a saint, which is embarrassing, as she was just a normal girl. She also added that she'd be happy if they could all get along. Alex widens his eyes when he stares at Yuri and finds her awesome. She's even more graceful in person. He thought she would be his girlfriend if he followed the saint's route. In the harem route, he can make all the heroines his girlfriends. Thinking of it makes him more motivated. On the other hand, Yuri let out a sigh of relief when her introduction was over. Everyone around her was a total stranger, so she was very nervous. She was worried if her intro wasn't weird, so she kept telling herself it was fine. However, she wishes she had been placed in Class D, where Ray and Melte were, because she was worried if she could make friends in a class full of high-ranking nobles. She closed her eyes and erased all the worries from her thoughts. Back in the orphanage, she never dreamed of attending an academy like this. She was confused about whether she would be grateful for the opportunity. Nevertheless, she was thankful for coming here because she met Ray and became friends with him. Upon recalling how Ray saved her and carried her like a princess, she couldn't help but become embarrassed. As she thinks that it was just a rescue operation, Celie notices that her expressions change so quickly. Later, Ernest announced that the real lesson would begin, so starting tomorrow, they must prepare themselves. Then their class ended. When the 3 students greeted her, Celie was surprised when they asked if she had plans after class. They invited her for tea together. Unfortunately, she politely declined their invitation and explained that she had to visit the castle later. The 3 girls were astounded and assumed she would meet with a royal family member. They were also amazed when she responded that she would receive guidance from His Majesty, a part of her training as the future queen. They can't help but adore her. so they start interrogating her regarding what kind of lessons she received or if that's royal etiquette. They also asked if she studied economics, leadership, and advanced subjects. Sae-Lee couldn't respond because of their simultaneous question and just gave them a laugh. Since she was busy, the three girls decided to leave her. Sae-Lee thanked them and suggested inviting her when she had free time. She smiled at them and waved them goodbye. Sae-Lee sighed as she realized they were only interested in her because she was a future queen candidate. She noticed that Yuri was still in her chair, still in deep thought. She was having a second thought on what to pick for her elective classes. She thought Ray would probably take swordsmanship, but she was terrible. There's also economics, yet she's not really feeling that either. Then her eyes widen if she chooses magic. Melte might also be taking it. She was thankful because that way, she could have peace in her academic life. All of a sudden, her jaw dropped when Sae-Lee disturbed her thoughts. Lady Sae-Lee is practically on another level since she's a noblewoman, aside from being the first prince's fiancée and a future queen candidate. Sae-Lee asks if she startled her. She seemed deep in thought, so Sae-Lee got curious. Yuri was totally fine and reasoned that she struggled to decide on her elective classes. Sae-Lee advises that since she was a saint, it would be best to choose something that aligns with that. Embarrassed, Yuri told her not to call her a saint, just Yuri. Sae-Lee told her that the academy does not offer courses specifically for clergy. If she wants to choose something practical, she might consider ancient history or magical theory. If it's just about honing her skills, magic refinement would be a good choice for her. She told Sae-Lee she is considering taking a magic-related course since a friend in another class is enrolling, yet she's still undecided on the rest, but thought she'd try a few and decide later whether to continue. Sae-Lee agrees and compliments Yuri's friend since it's a good one. She also mentioned that there are some classes she won't know if they suit her until she actually takes them. Yuri agrees with her, yet she still finds it hard to know. Nonetheless, Sae-Lee envies Yuri for having a friend who can give her such good advice. The saint smiled and said that, unfortunately, they ended up in different classes, and she didn't know anyone in Class A, so she felt a little lonely. She was taken aback when Sae-Lee suddenly rose from the chair and volunteered to be her friend. Yuri wondered why a duke's daughter and a future queen candidate wanted to be friends with her. Sae-Lee was confused because she was also a count's daughter, so she told her there was no reason to feel intimidated. Yuri replies that she's a saint and was originally a commoner, which might not match up. Sae-Lee was sad and gave up if the saint didn't like the idea. Yuri was worried when she saw that the future queen candidate was upset, so she immediately told her it wasn't what she meant. To Yuri's surprise, Sae-Lee quickly changed her mood. She remembers what Ray told her, to try different things and continue if they feel right. Then, the future queen candidate suddenly held her hand and told how happy she was to have made a friend. She was looking forward to spending time with her. Meanwhile, Ray was sneezing. Maybe Sae-Lee remembers him. A while later, Sylphie asked Ray to play, but he was busy doing something for tomorrow. He asked him to give him a second. Sylphie throws a tantrum because he hasn't played with him since they got to the academy. While Ray apologizes, Dine interrupts and advises Sylphie not to trouble Ray. Sylphie wanted to argue but stopped and calmly flew towards Ray to see what he was doing. Ray apologized again and explained that he can't use his powers whenever he wants because there are too many people around the academy and the dorms. He mentioned that his class for tomorrow was practical magical training. After hearing Ree was counting on him, Sylphie became excited, thinking that they were going to play. He flew around the dorm while humming. Ray turns to Dine and apologizes too for not being able to pay much attention since they came there. Dine responded that it was fine. Being with him is enough happiness for her. She also added that if she could occasionally go on a date with him, that would be more than enough for her. Since Sylphie was still young, when he heard the word date, he excitedly wanted to go too. Dine was confused because the young spirit did not even know a date. However, Ray thought about the practical magic class. He was wondering what kind of magic everyone would use. Morning came, and students from Class D gathered for their magic class. First to try is Flaga, who throws his magic on the center of the board. As expected, his subordinates cheered and praised him again for getting a high score. Flaga boasts that it's the score that he deserves. Then it was Siegfried's turn. Lord Flaga mocked him and said he was pretty unlucky for having to go after him. He advised him to be careful not to embarrass himself. Siegfried responds that it's a wonder how he can be so proud of something trivial. He throws him a deadly look and tells him he will put in a little effort if he runs his mouth. He stood elegantly and pointed his finger at a board like a gun. Ray and Melta were surprised by his stance, while Lord Flaga mocked him for trying to be eccentric. But Siegfried ignored him and continued what he was doing. Melta was impressed when he gathered his mana on his fingertips to control it. However, Ray was surprised that she could tell it. Melta explains that she can even tell his rare dark attributes, yet the stance that Siegfried took was one she had never seen before. Ray revealed he had already seen that stance before from an S-rank adventurer. Siegfried fired his magic on the board, making it move. Melta and Ray were amazed. As a result, Miriam found it magnificent for its precise mana control and overwhelming force. She gave Siegfried an A+, the highest score so far. Lord Flaga was enraged when he heard Siegfried's score. His three subordinates were worried and were trying to comfort him. He claimed that he was far more elegant than the second prince. So Lord Flaga turned to him and said that, as expected of royalty, Siegfried was somewhat capable, but he warned him that there wouldn't be a next time. He continues to yell and compare him to a whelp, but Siegfried ignores him and continues to walk towards Ray. Siegfried walked past Ray and said he had already warmed up the stage. He must go on and knock that Flaga fellow down a peg. Then he pointed at the three ladies who seemed to be his fans. Even Melta was cheering for him. Ray was sweating since he was trying his best not to stand out. When he walked to the spot, he heard Flaga insult him for being a country noble. He looked forward to seeing what kind of third-rate magic he would show them. But Ray ignores him instead, and he continues, stating that he will perform wind magic. Other students were surprised when they heard that he would use wind magic. Others commented that it's painfully average, while others told him to go on and embarrassed himself with his pathetic little spell. He knew those insults came from Flaga's group. He's had it out for him since the introduction, while Siegfried is clearly enjoying it. In his situation, deliberately holding back will probably encourage Flaga. He stepped forward and took a sword. While doing so, Flaga starts to laugh and insult him again. He claims that country folk are so hopeless. He was asked what he planned on doing with the sword since they were in the magic class. They also asked if he even understood their assignment. For the second time around, he ignored them. He stated that since he has the opportunity, allow him to show his specialty. In his mind, he called Sylphie and lifted the sword. He told the young spirit that it's time for the whirlwind. Sylphie understood his assignment, created wind, and wrapped it around the sword. Siegfried and Melta were both surprised when the wind gathered around his sword. Then he looks at the board and strikes his sword towards it. As a result, the board was cut in half. Lord Flaga and his subordinates were shocked that it split in two. Miriam seems satisfied by Ray's magic. He told everyone that it's a flying slash, and it's been a while since she has seen that technique. He also commented that it's like a father and son. He told Ray that she heard he's been saying he doesn't want to stand out. But after what he had shown, that wish of his has just been shattered, because without a doubt he was a top-scoring A+. Ray was flustered, asking himself if he was overdoing it. He remembers that Miriam said it's been a while since she'd seen that technique. He was now curious if she knew his father. Later on, students started to walk towards him while giving praise. They commented that it was terrific and had never seen anything like that. He was now surrounded by them. They simultaneously asked if he combined swordsmanship and magic since it was cool, while others said that his power was incredible. But he didn't respond to their question and claimed that his technique was nothing. Little did he know, Flaga stood on his back, gritting his teeth angrily. In his mind, he should be the one standing there instead of Ray. He understands if it's Siegfried, but for that country bumpkin, he can't accept it. He tries to convince himself that everything was a fluke, or maybe Ray cheated somehow. His subordinates agreed with him because he was clearly superior in skill. As expected of his dog, they can't accept their owner's defeat. Ray felt the intense glare from Flaga, but was startled when Siegfried suddenly pushed him, claiming he was impressed. He never expected him to shatter that target, which exceeded his expectations. The second prince continues and teases him that he stands out the most, even if he doesn't want to. Ray was embarrassed and asked him to stop. Yet Siegfried continued and told him their kingdom is unlucky for someone like him to have no interest in climbing the ranks. But that luck is not his concern since he is not interested in inheriting it. Then, Melta suddenly appears and praises them both. The second prince is good, while Ray is incredible, especially with his move where he wraps the sword with wind. It was awesome for her. Ray and Siegfried were confused when Melty suddenly turned around, drooling as she planned on trying that too. But swords are too heavy for her, so she can't hold one. She plans to make a sword out of fire and is excited, already picturing it. Lord Flaga was still irritated as firing magic with a sword is unheard of and preposterous. Besides, how could a simple wind spell magic like that split the target in two? He gritted his teeth and thought there must be some trick. He even accused Ray of cheating because, for him, there's no way that a third-rate country noble could get a better score than he did. Not wanting to accept any defeat, he immediately ordered his two subordinates to examine the target and find proof that Ray had cheated. The two students picked up the target, but someone called them to get out of the way. They were astonished when they saw that Melta was releasing an overwhelming mana. Inside the forest, a foot was stepping from one branch to another. The foot's owner is Ray, along with Sylphie. He stopped when he saw two birds and asked permission to come in. It looks like the birds understand him, so he quickly moves and runs fast until he reaches a particular area. As he expected, there was no one there that early. He told Sylphie they can play there as much as they want. The young spirit was so happy and started to whirl around. Then he unsheathed his two swords and started his training along with Sylphie. They didn't notice that Celie was walking towards them. The future queen candidate noticed something strange because leaves were moving mid-air. She looked around and was surprised to see someone with refined and beautiful movements. She assumed that the person was dancing in the wind. Her eyes widened when she saw that the figure was Ray. She was bewildered by his movements, which moved lightly as if he were weightless. She remembers that the House of Kreutzer has the divine power of wind, which explains why. She thought Ray was so much more than when she saw him sparring with her guards, and it looks like he's having so much more fun. As Ray continued training, he suddenly stopped when he noticed something. He turned his head and saw that it was Celie. The future queen immediately greeted him with a good morning and said he got up quite early. She thought she would be the first one there, so she was surprised to see him. Ray seemed worried and asked if she wasn't watching him the whole time. His jaw dropped when the future queen apologized, since she was captivated and couldn't find the right moment to say anything. He was embarrassed yet happy that it was she who saw him. Upon hearing his words, Celie seems to blush, but then she bursts into anger when she remembers that he never tried to see her since the ceremony. She angrily asks him if he has been swamped. Ray reasoned that they would see each other in their elective classes. Her anger subsided, and she told Ray to keep her company after their next business management class for a long while. Ray understands her, so he grants her wish. Since they were already there, Celie took out her sword for a little sparring match with him. She was more motivated to have a partner than to train alone. Ray agreed with her, but he noticed someone coming their way, so he decided to hold off for now. Celie seemed disappointed, but she told him not to back out the next time they met. Ray agrees with her, then immediately turns around and leaves her. When Ray was already gone, Celie sighed as she thought they could finally have a long talk. Yet Ray left. She looks at her back, wondering who could interrupt her private time with Ray. Her eyes widened when she saw that it was Prince, her fiancé. She didn't know what to say while wondering if Ray knew it was Lord Alex who was coming and was trying to be considerate. Since she didn't sense anyone's presence, she set aside her thoughts, paid the first prince respect, and bowed to him. On the other hand, Alex seemed mesmerized and couldn't find any words to say. He noticed that her hair was tied back so it wouldn't get in the way while swinging her sword. It had such a refreshing look. He even observed that she's wearing pants for training. There's such a dignified grave in her cuteness. She has such great looks that he can't help but feel something for his fiancée. However, Celie cut his deep thoughts, asking him if he was always up that early. He agreed with her and said he always comes to that place to train first thing in the morning. But today, she beats him. The truth is, it's his first time there. In the academy part of the game, events to raise the favorability with different characters pop up from time to time. He knew about the morning events, so he made a point of waking up early to arrive. Celie admits that she woke up early and thought she'd get some exercise, but if it meant she could meet him like that, it was well worth waking up early. Because of her words, Alex seemed struck by lightning right through his heart. Instantly told himself that he already loved her while his body was shaking. That's why the future queen was confused and called his name. He didn't know how to respond until he remembered that there were a few dialogue choices. Training together is supposed to be the correct answer. He was nervous and stuttered at the same time. He didn't know how to answer and draw a conclusion that if they trained together, he would come face to face with Celie. In other words, they will stare into each other's eyes while swinging swords. But he didn't want to go with that idea because he was certain he would be nervous and embarrassed. Still, he told her he would start training and told her they should begin. He really is an idiot. He gets flustered in front of his fiancée and is not confident enough to act like a prince. The reason is that Celie is just too cute to handle. He knew the events were random, but there would be more chances. All he needs to do is act calmer once he gets a little more used to it, because if he can choose correctly next time, he can make up for that setback. He was determined to do the right thing next time. Celie thought they could practice with their swords together since they were both there. She was worried that she had done something to upset Alex. She was upset that she didn't understand what he was thinking. Their conversation never gets going, and sometimes cuts off midway. She reminds herself to be more careful. With Ray, she can talk to him normally without trouble. But she immediately dismissed those thoughts because comparing Lord Alex to another man is rude. In the end, she blamed herself for how she approached him. She told those events with Ray while having tea, as he had promised earlier. Ray couldn't believe it. She trained herself even though Lord Alex was there. Celie agrees and explains that she woke up early to practice with her sword. It just happened that he was there first but ran off. Then, Alex starts to train by himself without a word. She asked Ray if it didn't make things awkward as she finished her practice early and returned. Ray understands her. Then he remembered seeing him practicing his sword in the courtyard that day. He commented that Alex was a hard worker, using his morning for training. The future queen agrees with him because Alex is the type of person who never neglects that kind of effort. And that is something she deeply respects about him. But he is always so distant that they can't keep a conversation going. She also added that she thought they might be able to train together this morning. But it didn't happen. She was worried that she might have done something to upset Alex. She was surprised by Ray's response, saying maybe Alex was a serious type of person. As the first prince, Lord Alex must carry the heavy weight of everyone's expectations and responsibilities. Siegfried, the second prince in their class, is a perfect example of the opposite. He says he has no intention of inheriting the throne, so he has zero motivation. He wished Siegfried shared some of Lord Alex's seriousness, which made Celie laugh. She realized that Ray might be right, that Alex is probably just too serious. She wishes for Alex to loosen up a little. Anyway, speaking of Siegfried, Ray asks if the second prince mentions that he turned down the offer to join the student council, because he was just compared to the first prince if he joined. So he asks if Celie has already decided to join the student council. In response, the future queen candidate agreed with him and said that Lord Alex is set to be the student council president, so she'll participate. If she, as his fiancée, didn't join, it would start rumors that they're not on good terms. Ray asked how many members there are on the student council. Celie told Ray to show a little interest in the student council, explaining that it had 5 members and 1 assistant. There are still spots open so she can recommend him if interested. Ray quickly declined her suggestion because all he could see was a future full of trouble. He was surprised when Celie mentioned that she would ask Lady Yuri from their class. The future queen notices his face when she mentions the saint, so she asks if he knew her. In response, Ray didn't tell her that he knew Yuri, and just gave a reason that she's famous. That's why he knew her name. If they found out he knew Yuri, he was certain she would grill him for details. He asked if there were other candidates. He suddenly spits out the tea when Celie mentions Melte aside from Lady Erica. He can't imagine that Melte could fit into the student council. It's impossible because she is the person they should keep away from the council, and vice versa. So he suggests Lord Flaga, who seems to love things like authority and status. Celie thinks of Flaga's name until she realizes that he was the second son of the Lansdowne family. His family background is impeccable, yet she wondered about his ability. Still, she preferred that the last member be a girl since she was the only girl among the officers. Ray assumed he was off her list since he was a guy, but Celie told him he was an exception. Ray made it clear he would never join the student council. Meanwhile, Lord Flaga went to the student council office. He quickly kneels before Prince Alex. The latter remembers him as the second son of the Lansdowne house. Alex thinks he's not here for a simple greeting, so he asks what he wants. In response, Flagga said he had come to him with a delicate matter. For generations, the House of Lansdowne has served as the student council officers at the Royal Academy, and he hopes to follow in their tradition and become a member of the student council himself. Flagga thought that by tradition, the highest-ranking member of the upper nobility becomes the student council president and selects the other members. In that case, the first prince, Alex, holds the presidency and the power of appointment. He gritted his teeth because if he had only gotten into Class A, he wouldn't have to come here groveling like this. Alex understood him, but they had a great many candidates this year. It's not just the three of them. They have his younger brother Siegfried, his fiancée Celie, and even the saintess Yuri Anastasia. They also have Eric's adopted sister Erica, a candidate. Flagga was surprised when Alex said it would be too many if they added him. They were also considering the disciple of the great archmage, a girl named Melta. Compared to them, he asks Flagga if there is any reason they should choose him. In response, Flagga explains that Siegfried seems not interested. As for Lady Erica and Yuri, they are adopted daughters. As for Lady Melta, while she was maybe the great archmage's disciple, she is just a commoner. He was sure that they would not even be considered as candidates. Then Alex told him that he may be right about Siegfried. With his mother being a lady-in-waiting, he has always kept a low profile. He likely has no desire to involve himself with the student council. However, Alex views others as being at the same level as Flagga. Those words made Flagga enraged for putting him on the same level as a commoner. Alex continued by saying that the academy is a meritocracy system. Even someone from a commoner background can be elected to the student council if they have the requisite skills. He heard Melta's power as a mage disciple was S rank and asked if Flagga's abilities surpassed hers. Flagga was speechless and remembered the time when Melta released such massive power. He can surpass her with a sword, but maybe not in magic. He gritted his teeth and assumed he couldn't be a student council member. But his face suddenly changes, and he finds hope when Alex says that he will make him a mere candidate. He must hear the opinions of others before he decides if he actually gets in. So Alex asks Eric about his opinion. Eric replies that he was reluctant, but he agreed. Flagga's family name is more than sufficient. However, it is also true that he lacks a deciding factor, just like what Alex said. He also added that their members are currently all from Class A. That includes Lady Celie. He believes forming the council with Class A students is standard practice. Alex agreed that communication would be easier if they kept it to Class A. Then he turns to Aries and asks for his opinion. The latter responds that Alex is the president and Eric was the vice president. Lady Celie would be the treasurer. He would likely handle the general affairs since he is better suited to physical work than thinking. That leaves the position of the secretary. Considering that the secretaries in other school years are also female, he believes a woman would be better for balance. Flagga was irritated at Aries, thinking he was just a womanizer. He was sweating and kept looking at the three. He cursed because no one would let him be a member. He asked himself why they got in his way and didn't respect him when he was a marquis, a member of the prestigious House of Lansdowne. Alex could see his two companions' positive opinion and announced that he couldn't give him no chance at all. He asked if he knew the freshman welcome party would be soon. The student council members are traditionally announced there, so he gave him a condition to participate in the freshman welcome party. Flagga must bring one of the three, Yuri Anastasia, Erica Milford, or Melta Suzeraine as his partner. The three ladies that he mentioned were also candidates for the student council. Even if he becomes a member, they still want to have a connection with them. Before the party, he needs to get one of the girls to agree to be his partner and escort her to the venue. If Flagga can do that, Alex promises to let him be a student council member. Alex asks him if he can do it. Flagga gave a positive response. He thanked the first prince for his consideration and promised to make sure he would seize that opportunity. Then he leaves the three. When Flagga had left, Eric immediately asked Alex if he was sure about the condition. He also added that he respects Flagga's name, but, as an individual, he does not see much benefit in bringing him into their ranks. Alex agrees with him since it's undoubtedly true. When Eric asks him why, he explains that they have merely given him a chance, even if the possibility of success is infinitely small. Whether he can seize it or not, it's up to Flagga. He also added that Eric will surely be Erica's partner. Eric agreed since he had no intention of yielding his sister to Flagga. Because of that, one candidate is gone. As for Siegfried, he plans to ask Melta to be his partner. Aries interrupted, assuming that the only remaining candidate was Yuri Anastasia. Alex told him that he was correct, and said that the saint was drawing a lot of attention. Apparently, a war to secure her as a partner has already begun behind the scenes. It will likely be a fierce battle. It's not impossible, but his chances seem pretty low. Then Alex fell into deep thoughts about Flagga being late to the game. He assumes he will panic and try to ask Yuri out using forceful methods, and the one to save her from that predicament will be him. A plan to kill two birds with one stone will raise his favorability with the saint, and in the process, he will bring Yuri to the student council. He apologized in advance to Flagga for having him serve as a stepping stone for his plan. He didn't notice that he was laughing aloud, which confused Aries and Eric about his actions. Eric likes his plan, to reject Flagga gracefully by giving him a chance without causing him to lose face. And if Flagga resorts to despicable means to secure a partner, they can use that as a reason to exclude him, as expected of their lord. sword, Alex. As Flaga walked toward his subordinate, he was thinking of aiming at Yuri. She may be the adopted daughter of Anastasia's house, but she was raised in a lowly orphanage. Even if she's portrayed as the saintess, she can't possibly say no to an invitation from him, a marquis. His dogs asked about the student council, and he responded that it was as good as decided. He was looking forward to the freshman welcome party. Ray went to the cafeteria to grab some food. While eating, he can't help but praise the exquisite and delicious food. It also has generous portions and a diverse menu. The fact that most of the students who eat there are commoners makes him feel more comfortable. The high-ranking nobles have their own restaurant, so they don't come to the cafeteria much because the restaurant is attached to the main building, while the cafeteria is in a separate building. Ray was so happy because the lunch lady really liked him and kept giving him a massive portion. As a result, he couldn't finish it. Two students who were talking about the freshman welcome party caught his attention. He thought he should probably make a decision soon. Even so, he didn't expect Siegfried to pick Melta as his partner so quickly. Just bribing Melta with a snack, she immediately agrees to be his partner. Siegfried chose someone with a background that wouldn't provoke the first prince's faction and wouldn't stir up drama. Ray imagined how Melta and Siegfried looked good as a couple when they stood together. Well, that is if they stay quiet, but you already know how our cute little Melta behaves. Ray got a few invitations too, but Dinah said none of those candidates suited him. Sylphie picks a specific person who's capable of playing with him. He really didn't know who to pick and decided to go with Eeny Meeny Miny Mo. Ray heard some commotion. A voice was asking someone to stop. They were Flaga's subordinates who seemed to demand that someone accept something. They also said that refusing the Lord is rude, so that person should accept it. Ray walks towards the crowd and hears a student say that Flaga was bothering someone. The girl seemed to be Yuri Anastasia, yelling at Flaga's group. She exclaimed that she had already said no since she didn't know them. Getting asked by a complete stranger to be their partner is just too much for her, and she has no intention of being his partner. Flaga burst into anger and said he was being polite and asking her nicely, yet she turned him down. Out of desperation and anger, Flaga suddenly grabs Yuri's hand and tells her to shut her mouth, ordering her to accept him as her partner. Yuri saw Ray in the crowd, so she immediately broke from Flaga's hold, rushed to Ray, and quickly grabbed his clothes. She yells at Flaga and says he has already promised to attend the party with Ray. That's why she can't accept his invitation. Ray was frozen upon hearing Yuri's words, while Flaga was furious. He shouted at Ray, asking if Yuri was really his partner. In response, he calmly said that it was how it turned out. Flaga was not yet finished and asked again why he was in that place. Ray seems confused by the question, yet still answers that the place was the cafeteria, and he was there to eat. His answer made Flaga rage because it was not what he meant. His question is why he inserted himself into their conversation. Ray seems perplexed and looks at Yuri, who has teary eyes. He responded to Flaga that he was there probably because they were annoying. He continued and told Flaga they'd been so loud that whole time. He reminded them that they were in the cafeteria, yet they were bothering everyone who was trying to eat. He added that they surround a girl with a big group of guys. From the outside, they just looked like punks harassing a defenseless girl. For the second time around, Flaga burst into anger for calling him a punk, because he was a noble since birth. The crowd agrees with Ray and starts to insult him, saying that the word punk suits him. Others yell because anyone can see that he has already been turned down by Yuri, yet Flaga kept trying to force her. Other comments do not think everyone will obey nobles just because of their status. Flaga heard someone calling him an idiot, so he asked the crowd who did it, because he was going to kill them. But the crowd was not bothered and continued to insult him, saying Flaga always boasted and clung to his family's name. They yell that he can't do anything on his own and call him a dumb noble and a trash one. Someone even threw something at him that landed on his head. Flaga couldn't control his anger anymore and released his power. When the crowd saw it, they started to run since the scene became dangerous. On the other hand, Yuri was worried and asked Ray what to do since everything turned into a significant incident. The latter calls Sylphie to mind, so the young spirit turns up the sound because he will do something. Then he clapped his hands, which made the crowd seem frozen because of the loud noise. The crowd, along with Flaga, seems clueless. Then Ray apologizes for the loud noise and asks Flaga to take a moment to sort things out. He said that Flaga asked Yuri to be his partner for the freshman welcome party. When Flaga agrees, he continues to say that Yuri has declined his invitation. Yuri agrees with him. He concluded there's no need to make a scene involving everyone. However, Flaga blamed Yuri for not accepting his invitation. Ray made it clear that the party invite is up to the individuals. Flaga smirked as he told him he was wrong. People of lower status should obey those of higher status, so personal choice doesn't exist. As usual, his idiotic subordinates seem so proud of his nonsense. Meanwhile, the two could only utter wow. Ray told Flaga, based on his logic, that Yuri is a count's daughter and a saint. That means she's not of a lower status. Flaga agrees since Yuri is the saint who supposedly receives a divine revelation and can use holy magic. Yet he belittles her because she's from a lowly orphan background. He also added that he doesn't know how Yuri wormed her way into a count's family, but adopting someone of unknown shared bloodline is a good grief. Then he insults Yuri's father for having no eye for people. That makes Yuri burst into anger and become emotional for speaking ill to her foster father. She stopped when Ray put his hand on her shoulder. He seriously asked if Flaga knew the Academy values ability above all else. Whether his marquis or Yuri's an orphan, there's no reason for anyone to obey him. At least not within the Academy. Flaga gritted his teeth in frustration and asked Ray if he was picking a fight with him. Ray smiles and asks him what he will do if he wants to fight him. At that moment, he was still Yuri's partner, and he had no intention of giving that position to him. If Flaga want to take Yuri from him, he can come at Ray with his strength. What he meant was a mock battle. Flaga can file a request if he can fight, but he changed his mind and decided to submit the request himself. Flaga will decide the date, time, location, and battle format. He urged him to beat him or overpower him. In that way, he won't be Yuri's partner anymore, and Flaga might get his chance. He turned to Yuri and gave her a wink. It's still Yuri's decision whether to accept Flaga as a partner. Flaga accepts the challenge and plans to crush Ray's little magic with his true strength. Students were rushing to an area to watch a practice match. Siegfried, walking in the hallway, heard two students talking about it. He sighed and decided to see the face of someone who wants to do that duel for fun. After hearing that the duel was between Flaga Lansdowne from Class D and Ray, he almost vomited his breakfast. He was confused because he knew Ray avoided drawing attention. He wondered if Ray did something to Flaga that made the latter angry, or maybe Flaga did something and made Ray angry. Out of the blue, Melta suddenly appeared, angry that Ray was going to a practice match, and at the same time, curious if he would use his magic right when she was not there. She wanted to see the match, and was hoping to have a fight against Ray. She even cursed Flaga for hogging Ray's magic all to himself. Then she told Siegfried they should go, and immediately rushed to the place. Meanwhile, students start to fill the area. Ray notices that the crowd has gathered. He looked around and saw Siegfried and Melta. The second prince was waving at him while Melty seemed angry at him. Then Yuri called his name, apologizing for the duel that had happened because of her. Ray comforts her by telling her that it's not something she should worry about. Even if it doesn't seem like it, he was furious at Flaga. Seeing how he insults an important friend right before him, he can't stay silent. Yuri seems frozen when she hears the word important, and Ray notices it, so he asks her if something is wrong. She said that it's nothing, and she's just worried. She also asked Ray not to hurt himself. The latter winked at her, claiming he would not lose to Flaga. If necessary, after leaving Flaga beaten up, he'll make him kneel before Yuri, but she immediately refuses because there's no need to go that far. Ray stared at her to show how fine and calm he was. Then he laughed because he would be glad if Yuri gave her support. Yuri says that she supports him, so he must do his best. Later on, Miriam announces that the practice match will begin. She stated that the challenger, Flaga Lansdowne's designation, will be a single fight with magic allowed. She looks at Ray since he was the designated one, and he asks if the combat mode is okay with him. When Ray agrees, she starts to announce the rules. The winner is the one who makes their opponent faint or surrender. Attacking vital points is prohibited, but since they have plenty of mages capable of healing, they don't need to worry even if they break their arms or cough up blood. Then she asks Flaga and Ray if they are ready. When the two just stared at each other, she told them to start. The two unsheathed their sword and made a stance. Flaga asks if his stance is something he came up with, and boasts that his swordsmanship was taught directly by the Imperial Guard. While the dogs cheered for their master, Ray just agreed with him, saying sword stances is important. Then he immediately jumps to Flaga, strikes him with his sword, and clarified that no matter how amazing one's stance is, it's pointless if he didn't know how to use it properly. Flaga cursed at Ray and quickly pushed his sword so hard that Ray stepped back to avoid it. On the other hand, Siegfried commented that his move won't work, and it's not practical for real combat. In fact, Ray is handling it as he pleases. He also added that he could already tell how the fight would end. Melta agreed, saying that their match was boring. She angrily shouted that swords are boring because she hoped to see Ray's magic. Siegfried didn't comment and wondered what the hell Flaga did to make Ray angry. He knows Ray is the type who calmly dodges everything that is thrown at him. He was sure it had something to do with the saint. But he doesn't care what happens as long as they are entertaining. Sylphie told Ray to go for it because Flaga is a villain who bothers Yuri. The young spirit urges Ray to take him down. Ray agrees with him because that is his intention. He instantly dashed towards Flaga and slashed his sword, but Flaga barely blocked it. Ray told him that the multiple acts of disrespect towards Yuri and the insult towards the Anastasia side, her adoptive father, hurt Yuri. He put force into his sword, swung it, and told the arrogant monkey that he had no intention of forgiving. Ray walks close to him and asks if that's all he got. Since it was a fight with magic, he encouraged Flaga to use his proud fire magic. Ray doesn't want people saying Flaga lost just because he didn't use magic. It would be problematic if they let him say that. Flaga gritted his teeth in anger, then he took his sword from his subordinate. He smirked, stating he will show him his power, the fire sword, Red Snake. He boasted that this fire magic had been passed down for generations in the Lansdowne family. He asks if it's scary, and tells Ray he can turn him into ashes with this. Siegfried was curious about the thing wrapping the weapon with magic, and thought that he had just stolen the technique from Ray. Melta explains that imitating in itself is not a bad thing. What is important is how you will adapt it to your own style, and make it yours. Speaking of that, she once tended to copy Suzerain's method. Siegfried was speechless and thought that Melta was saying sensible things sometimes. Melta adds that Flaga's sense for naming things is terrible, so it's a minus point. Back at the arena, Flaga shows how fabulous his red snake is to Ray. He asks if it's much more terrifying than his stupid wind magic, and adds that it is too late to regret letting him use it. Sylphie was furious, yet Ray remained calm. Then Flaga ordered his red snake to wrap around Ray and burn him to death. The fire gradually surrounded him, which made Yuri worried. When the fire had already consumed him, students stated that it was too dangerous. Flaga rejoiced, yelling at his red snake to kill and burn Ray to ashes. Ray uses his wind magic, and with a slash, the fire vanishes. Seeing him unharmed shocked Flaga to the core, wondering why the flames didn't char Ray. Well, that is because he blew it away. Flaga burst into anger and continued throwing attacks, but it couldn't reach Ray because Sylphie was taking care of blowing everything away. It is now Ray's turn to attack, so he rushes forward and makes multiple slashes towards the ugly monkey. At first, it seemed nothing had happened until his clothes became tattered, which made him look like a beggar. "Guys, throw this arrogant monkey a coin." Ray pointed his sword at his face and asked if he still wanted to continue. The latter gritted his teeth, but he knelt before Ray and surrendered. With that, the outcome had been decided. Yuri couldn't control her excitement, while Siegfried seemed entertained. On the other side, Flaga's subordinates was worried about him. Then, finally, Miriam announced that Ray Kreutzer was the winner. Sylphie and Dine were happy. Even the crowd was rejoicing. While Ray observed how the dogs assist their master, Siegfried approached him and stated he always believed he would win. But Ray was sure he was just watching for fun. Siegfried couldn't control his laugh because of Flaga's face a moment ago. So he asks Ray if that's what it looks like when someone breaks their spirit. Someone called Ray's name, and when he turned to see who it was, his bones almost broke when Melta suddenly bumped her head on him. Ray asked Melta if she was cheering for him as well. He was about to thank her, but Melta cut him off and demanded a fight. Ray looks confused, but Melta didn't give him a chance to speak, and adds that she wants a practice match with him. It's fun for her as she can cast a bunch of spells. Ray explains that the one being challenged can refuse in practice matches, because otherwise, anyone could force unfavorable conditions. So, he rejected the practice match with Melta, but Melta was too stubborn and rejected his rejection. As he thinks that once you do a practice match, you can't challenge or accept another one for 3 months, Yuri suddenly came to him and started crying. He worriedly looked at his two friends before reminding her that it would be fine because he wouldn't lose to someone like Flaga. Yuri reasoned that she was just scared. To her surprise, Ray suddenly kneels and asks permission to accompany him and participate in the upcoming student welcome party. Yuri blushed and held her face, saying that it was really unfair. Melte burst into anger and accused Ray of being evil for making Yuri cry. Siegfried immediately defends Ray, saying it's not true. Actually, Ray was undecided about going to the party because he was having trouble finding a partner. Since Yuri felt sorry for Ray, he suggested helping him by becoming his partner. Yuri understood the situation and happily agreed she'll be his partner. Ray forgot to make Flaga kneel and apologize, so he asked if she wanted him to bring Flaga now and make him do it. Siegfried couldn't help but ask if he was a demon. At the same time, Alex thinks that it's about time for Flaga to start moving. Outside, he heard 2 students talking about how amazing the battle was. Chapters end at 12. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga. Have a good day.